traditional SEO influences AI. This is actually specifically what this means. We have to shift that thinking away from keyword research to topical modeling. That is query Fanout.
One SEO tactics you think won't survive AI search?
Buying cheap links and just flooding it with crap, because relevance with the industry, with the content is so exceptionally important. We're trying to understand the two minds of an AI model. There is grounded queries and there is ungrounded queries. Two really important questions that every client is asking about AI visibility. How are we currently being impacted by AI? And the second thing is, how can we influence the AI models to recommend us in their results?
Welcome to the Agency Insider Show, where we explore strategies shaping the future of digital marketing. I'm your host, Navneet Kaushal, and today I'm joined by Nick Ranger, Senior Technical SEO Consultant at Dejan Marketing, Search Award Judge, Google WTM Ambassador, and Chair of SEO Collective Women in Search Australia. Nick is known for her deep technical expertise and for leading conversations around how AI is changing the way brands are discovered online. Nick, welcome to the show.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Navneet, for having me. Hello to the audience. I am very excited to talk about AI visibility. There is so much to unpack. So I'm going to do my best to be able to disseminate it and answer, I hope, all the preliminary questions to be able to get quite deep so that you get an understanding of where we're at the moment and what we can be able to practically do with this information, because I am a practitioner at heart. I'm not a theorist, and I think it's really good to be able to blend both of those so we have a good core understanding of what we're looking at, why that's so, and what to do about it.
Okay. Now, before we start, could you briefly share your personal journey from civil engineer and electric violist to a technical SEO? I mean, how did you ended up in being a senior technical SEO?
Your guess is as good as mine. I think to anyone listening, if you ask any SEO, we're all going to have very unique answers for how we got into SEO. Search engine optimization, at least when I was growing up, I'm nearly 40 now, and the thing that we didn't grow up was, really having a concept of search and websites and how they influence them, at least not for me. So I went a very traditional route and pursued civil engineering, and I found pretty early on that was not necessarily the kind of career path that was that interesting to me. I found that I wanted to be able to explore more of my creative side. So I'd been playing by that stage. I had 27 years. I was a concert trained violinist, and I decided, I want to try contemporary music. So I picked up an electric violin, and I can't say the rest is history, but one thing led to another. I did some tours around the world and came to Melbourne, and was sort of always looking for part-time work that was going to be able to really just fuel my artistic career in between work and in between large projects. And it's so funny, I got introduced to SEO as an intern, writing content and building links, and I had no idea what any of that meant. But it was like one of those things that once you start digging and you start Googling, like, well, why am I writing a blog? Like, what do you mean? What is a title tag? What is a meta description? Why does it matter that we have to do research with Search Console and with SEMrush and Ahrefs to inform those? Like, what does that all mean? And, I think I've got a naturally curious mind and a naturally inquisitive nature. So just scratching at the surface, was delighted to find such a deep well of concepts and theories and testing and a real science to the art of what we do. So in a way, I feel like it was a way for me to be able to be very analytical minded, but allow a lot of creativity with the role as well. And I've never looked back. I've never been bored. I've always pushed forward and found some wonderful connections with the SEO community. I've just found that this has just been such a truly rewarding career. So that's how I got into it.
Okay. Now, I mean, as someone who's been both a consultant and a community leader, what excites you most about the changes in search right now?
Well, I think, and I'm going to quote Dan Petrovich because I've been in SEO for 10 years now. And I got some wonderful advice from Cindy Crum, which was, if you want to understand where we're going, having a sense of the history and where we came from, to be able to understand patterns. And I think that was such wonderful sage advice. So I'm going to use Dan Petrovich, my colleague and boss. We're in such an interesting point of time in search right now. It feels very much with the advent of AI models really influencing the search landscape. It's completely fundamentally changed. Modern search engines are still fundamentally based on information retrieval, but now they're powered by two distinct layers of AI augmentation. We've got the interpretive layer. That's the part that everyone sees, like the AI overview, like the chat response. That's the final output. But we've also got the agentic layer. Like that's like the back end of the AI model, where the AI makes its decisions, what queries to be able to expand on, and whether to search for fresh information and which sources to trust. So they're the things that we're looking to influence. And I think, and this is where I'm getting to Dan's quote, it feels very much like the early hacker days of SEO. He has 25 plus years of experience under his belt, and there's a lot of things that I never got to see or experience. So, being an SEO right now, being able to test and influence models and look at the statistical probability of tokens and the way that we could be able to change content and change perceptions of things is really, really fascinating work. And that's where we're sort of at the moment, where with AI visibility and wanting to influence those models. So yeah, the landscape has changed immeasurably. From the early 2000s of having your 1 to 10 plus, blue links on the front page of your search. Now we have multimodal. Now we have AI overviews. Now we have multiple different tabs that's splitting out the different search experiences. Like, it's just fundamentally changed so much, and it's such an exciting space to be a part of. So yeah, it's truly great. I find it is actually.
A lot of people find it scary as well, but I personally feel exactly like you said. I've myself been in this space for 23 plus years. So of course, seen most of those things. And I see this is just like how we started. It's just that we have to tackle the smarter model now as previously. Now, do you think the SEO industry has fully realized how different AI-driven discovery is compared to traditional rankings?
I think they've realized, but maybe to echo and to support what you said previously about, the fear that a lot of people have around this. I think that's a very commonly shared perspective of AI. I think there's a lot that is not very understood. It seems very much like a black box at the moment. So we're very much looking towards, third-party tools to be able to track and understand and explain things. And for us in the labs, we do a great deal of work with machine learning, with natural language processing, and building and training our own models and creating our own tools. So, while it's really interesting to sort of have an understanding of the SEO zeitgeist, I think the industry in itself definitely understands it, but just doesn't have the conceptual tools that readily available to know what to do about that. So that's one of the things that we've thought we wanted to be able to help. Dan Petrovich, and I'm going to mention him a lot because he is the architect for a lot of our tooling and a lot of our testing and mediation of our tools. I'm the machinist who is working with them directly with clients and testing them and making small iterations of my own. But really, Dan is the primary architect of these. So, I think for the industry at large, this is why I think sharing what we do and in the way that we do it is really important, because in the same way that in other communities of science, in the mathematical community, once someone has theories, that's shared and discussed and tested, and we're able to do that. I mean, we don't have mathematical proof like we do for other things,
Right.
but all these different theories become the basis of layers for other people's research and for really progressing the community at large. So, that's why both Dan and myself, really want to share what we do and get feedback and work with things. Because I think, maybe we can talk a little bit more about AI visibility. In my view, there are two really important questions that every client either comes to ask or is already asking about AI visibility. And that's like, well, how are we currently being impacted by AI? What is the influence of what we already rank for? And the second thing is, and probably maybe more common, is, well, how can we influence the AI models to recommend us in their results? How can we be able to position ourselves that we will be suggested, or even in their training data? And these are the things that we both have tried to answer, and I think to some very good effect of being able to build statistical models that that answer those very two questions.
So when you say about training model, because let's be frank, the way people think is that AI model is not more than just doing a traditional SEO. You have your website, you have your schema, you have your EEAT, and all you're gonna do is get link from listicles and get recommended. Is it that simple?
No. It would be fantastic if it was, and I think again that's where a lot of people, kind of put it into this black box of, we're sort of told, these throwaway comments from very intelligent people, but we're never really. It's really hard to sort of navigate this area because of the complexity. But I'll do my best to explain it. So we're trying to understand the two minds of an AI model. There is grounded queries and there's ungrounded queries. Ungrounded queries are, when a user types into like, any one of your chatbots, whether it be ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, etc. That ungrounded query is basically like the results are going to be generated from the AI's core memory. So everything that it's learned during its initial training, that's the result that it gets. And now we can be able to, switch on grounded queries. Like there's literally like a little switch you can be able to do. And this is really good for us to be able to test, because grounded queries essentially mean that when a user types it in, whether it's in a chatbot or whether they're typing it into Google search or whether they're typing it into Microsoft Bing, those results are going to be generated by leveraging RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which essentially takes the AI pre-trained model, surfaces real-time organic live search results, the things that we traditionally influence, and amalgamates that into the AI's core memory and produces the result. So that is what it's been able to, when we see an AI overview, when we see an AI overview result in people also ask answer, that's actually where it's been surfaced from. So that's really, really interesting for us to think about it in those two minds. And like I said earlier, there's those two really important questions where, like, what is currently being impacted by AI? What we've done is we've basically trained a model using Google's own patents to be able to have a model of predictability of whether or not queries will be either grounded or ungrounded. So we basically scrape all of your content So like if we're working with like, whatever brand, whatever brand you want to pick from,
Right.
we'll work with them, we'll scrape all their content, we'll build them down into something that's machine readable. It's called like a vector embedding. I'm not going to get too much into the science. It's basically like we take all the content and make it machine readable, and we can be able to do a wide variety of those of things with that. But we can be able to segment that out and classify them into different intent buckets.
Okay.
Or we can be able to use our models to be able to classify whether or not it's going to be grounded or not. So we can basically be able to answer, how much have we been influenced by, well, how many queries in your search console, how many queries that you actually have as part of your core content would be influenced by a grounded result. And now that's going to give us like a percentage of like your total amount of queries to the total amount of
Okay.
grounded queries of how
Right.
much would actually be impacted.
Okay. So is it a part of what now people call as fan out queries? So is it something which you get a fan out queries and it is similar to what you're talking about a bit?
Oh, I love that you've asked that question, because that's sort of the second question. How can I influence the AI models to
Right.
recommend the brand and the results? Just knowing like how much of your current queries have been influenced by grounded just means like, okay, we already have content that we can be able to go through and tweak and amalgamate. Fan out queries are actually typically synthetic queries that are generated from the brand to the entity and how they make those connections to that. So let's do like a practical example, because again, I'm using a lot of language that may be new to your audience, and I want to make
Yes.
this as easy to understand for as many people as possible. So
Right.
when I say, big fancy things like brand to entity, that basically means just like, let's do like a little exercise. Like everyone listening, list 10 things that you associate with your brand. Type that as a prompt into like any one of your AI models. That AI model is going to produce like 10 things that it associates with your brand. And if your brand is like, can you give me a brand? Let's say like
Nike.
Nike. You know what? I thought of Nike and you said it, so that's great. In our own trained model, we have just basically given an ungrounded result of Nike, because that's like right at the top of our mind. So that's fantastic. So, let's put in a prompt into one of your AI chatbots, right? Google AI Studio, which uses Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever you want. And then just type in this prompt, list 10 things that you associate with your brand, and this being Nike. So it's going to say, it's going to list 10 things that it associates with Nike. It'll be shoes, it will be sports apparel, etc. All those different things. And that's really good, because now this is what it has in its understanding of your brand to the entity, because shoes are an entity,
Right.
so that's where it's starting to go from.
So
Now,
just to make it
conversely,
more, just one sec. So what I'm doing is I'm actually search as we speak. So if you can see, so I'm just sharing that on the screen.
Yeah,
if
let's
you can
do this live.
Yeah, so that's
Awesome.
so this is what I did. So I said list 3 things that you associate about the brand Nike, and this is what comes in.
10 things that you associate about the brand
Let me just
Nike.
redo it.
Yep.
List 10 things, right?
Yeah.
This is the prompt which I gave.
Perfect. Yeah. So Just Do It slogan, Swish logo, authentic excellence, innovation in sportswear, Air Jordan line, endorsements and sponsorships, streetwear and sneaker culture, empowering campaigns, global reach, and sustainability efforts. As far as like brand to entity concepts, they're really, really strong ones. And it goes beyond just from being an e-commerce company that is there to push shoes and to push apparel and the like. this is a really great representation of its whole ecosystem and community outreach and engagement. So it's really, really strong branding from them. I mean, considering that we both had that in mind, it's really, really strong for us to be able to do that. So now I wanted you to do another search, another prompt, and I want to go list 10 brands that you associate with, and let's pick one of these. Let's pick innovation in sportswear.
In the same chat?
Yeah, in the same chat. List 10 brands you associate with innovation in sportswear. I also see that you're logged in as well. That
I haven't searched for Nike, so trust me, it's not trained on my model. Okay.
All right. Here are 10 top brands are strongly associated with innovation in sportswear. So number one is Nike. So that's great. Now we can be able to verify that the model has strong one-to-one confidence with innovation in sportswear and Nike. Then it's Adidas. Then it's Under Armour, Puma, Asics, Reebok, Lululemon. If you want to keep scrolling, the North Face, Solomon, and On. In brackets On Running. Really, really interesting here. I'm just trying to think of someone that's not mentioned. New Balance isn't here. Where's New Balance?
No, it's not
here.
there. Right.
So if you work for New Balance, that's a really big gap, because now I'm like, well, I want to be in the AI models, in the suggested results for this. Well, why am I not able to do so? And that's where we're starting to create these associations, and now this is creating basically a baseline. Like, this is a fundamental principle that is a bidirectional survey of the brand to entity, entity to brand result. And it's really that first step of turning an abstract goal into something measurable. So with monitoring, and this is the whole concept behind AI Rank, and this is free for anyone to be able to use right now. So, go for your life. We track the frequency and the rank of brand perception inside the models for Gemini, ChatGPT, using a bidirectional probing methodology, exactly in the way that we did it, except we do it multiple times for you, for your competitors. We take into the country as well, and we combine these into a weighted score, which becomes our primary KPI for AI visibility, because what we're wanting to do is to have an understanding of what the model understands and where it loses confidence in association, so we can be able to have a really key understanding of, well, we can see our competitors are surfacing for here, but we're not. And a lot of the time when we do this work, if you click the plus sign, because you're in ChatGPT right now, you can also see, that little plus sign. Oh, yours is different to mine. But the world search. Yeah. So that's basically going to give you a grounded result now.
So what do you want me to type now, Vijay?
Well, you could basically do those same two prompts, and you're going to now get a lookup. So what we just did was we just got 2 ungrounded results. We just surfaced what is in the pre-trained model for ChatGPT, and we can see all the brands and associations, and New Balance.
Now I do a new search for this.
Yeah, you can totally do a new search for that, and you can be able to, do that. But that's a whole concept of
this, right?
Yeah, you can do that. But just for folks listening at home, that is the whole concept behind, what we're trying to do here. If we're also, turning on and doing like a web search lookup, that is the whole concept behind what is the difference between an ungrounded and a grounded result. So this is just like one little example of what we do, thousands and thousands of times over.
This, I will type this also and see does New Balance comes in or not.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity. So surprisingly, On moves up, Adidas is there, but
Yeah.
nope.
Yeah. But interestingly, we see a new one with Mover with Sale
Yeah.
GP, a startup
Yes.
focused on sustainable sportswear. Really, really interesting. So typically this is where, and anyone that sort of listen to like Gen AI, like conversation from a lot of people, when you hear throwaway things like, oh, traditional SEO influences AI, this is actually specifically what this means. This is specifically what it means. So with the work that I do, I first want to know, well, how are we currently being influenced? And let's have a understanding of like, where is like the falls and the rise of traffic differences, where are they actually coming from? So I can be able
Okay.
to look at, is this because of AI result that we've seen a loss of CTR, clicks, impressions? Or is it a keyword intent shift? Or is it a low quality content? Or is it because of data accessibility, like website architectural issues? Is it because of
Okay.
the localization signals, international signals, competition, spam, and etc. Right? They're just the common traffic impact reasons. But I want to be able to understand what is currently influencing clients right now with what their what their current content and what they're currently ranking for in Search Console. So that's a really first important question. Now, you asked a really good question around query fan out, and this is sort of where that second question comes from, which is, okay, well, now I've got an idea of like where like a lot of my traffic loss comes from, like where how I can be able to really conceptually think about that. Now we can sort of build a strategy to influence the AI model. So this is more about proactively shaping the AI's perception and becoming more of its preferred source. Now, a lot of the time we have clients come to us, and they come to us with a small handful of pages, a small handful of queries, and they say, we just want to see influence on these.
Right.
That's totally fine if that happens. But a lot of the time, we want to be able to build topical authority. So if you come to me and say like, hey, I really want to, be the next Nike, and I have, a whole board of stakeholders that are very invested in this, and we're really wanting to properly go after this, and we are New Balance, and we just want to start to even be mentioned in these models. Well, I'm going to look at these core concepts and build a topical authority and use query fan out research to do so. Because what query fan out research is essentially creating synthetic queries that really start to map out like the most comprehensive answer for an entire topic. So to become that source, we have to shift that thinking away from keyword research to topical modeling. That is query fan out. So, the idea is to take that core parent topic, expand it into its full constellation of intent. Because what we're wanting to do is we have to anticipate every answer, every related question a user and AI agent would have on that subject. Now, when we've done this with clients, because like I said, this isn't theory for us. We do this with real clients, with real data, on a day-to-day basis. This is what I do on my day-to-day. When we do this, we will work with them, and we might get like 7 million synthetic queries with using query fan out on their models. That is a huge amount of data to be able to work with.
Right.
So what's really important for us is to now think about, well, how do we break this down? How do we prioritize that? A lot of what we do is we will ask them for queries that have like are associated with like high revenue based queries, like queries that have generated like a lot of a
Commercial
lot of
intent.
sales, a lot of signups.
Okay.
We'll ask them for their SEM campaigns and results, so we can be able to see what people are clicking on. But more concise than that, we've developed a query search volume prediction engine using deep learning. Now, this is basically, well, it's not really basic, but like I said, I'll do my best to be able to,
Right.
talk about this. But, how do you efficiently assess like the search volume potential of all of these unproven queries? Because, like I said, this isn't keyword research. This isn't going to Search Console. This isn't going to SEMrush, Ahrefs, your Rank Ranger, who I now think has been bought by someone else. It's not going to any of these and looking at search volume or keyword planner, whatever. We and manually checking each one of those from this synthetic queries with these tools is completely impractical, because like I said, for one of my clients, I've got 7 million queries that has been generated. So we wanted to be able to automatically predict the search volume ranges for these Fanout queries and transform that broad list into more of an actionable prioritized asset. So a lot of what we've done is like we've created like a query demand estimator. And the core idea is to train a sequence of classification model to categorize a given query into a predefined search volume bucket. Again, trying not to get too into the weeds, but we wanted to be able to train a model and look at the grounding of that model, and the success of any supervised model hinges on the quality and the quantity of its training data. So we looked at the organic performance data. So we aggregated the historical search volume data with impressions and clicks for millions of queries where our digital properties ranked well. So just looking at positions 1 to 10. Because ranking well implies that the impression data is a good proxy for actual search demand, as the content is visible to a significant portion of searches. So then we look at defining each of these different volume buckets. So we established 12 different distinct search volume ranges from very low to very high, sort of like in the 50 to 100, all the way up to like your 200,000 plus sort of impression ranges. So they became like our target labels. And with like labeling each of these query buckets, like, each query from those high ranking data sets were assigned to its corresponding impression bucket, creating like a nice little paired data set. So maybe it might be something like Dijon AI query Fanout tool might be labeled as 500 to 1,000, as far as, what that predicted volume estimate should be. So we use that pre-trained transformer model, and we wanted to be able to go through and then do some tokenization, batching, and epochs, and using optimization. Again, there is a blog that supports all of this. So, for anyone who's listening, who's just like, you said you were going to say this very simply, I failed. Because like I said, it's very complex. But the main takeaway is we wanted to be able to prioritize this. So as you can probably appreciate, there was a lot of thinking and a lot of training and different models that we used to be able to synthesize this, to be able to create more of like a meaningful prioritizing mechanism based on like meaningful Search Console data. So this isn't, it's not just, generated from nowhere. It's generated from actually the collection of organic performance data of millions of different queries. So with that being said, this creates now like a really helpful prioritization mechanism. Again, like I said, the client comes to us with typically a set of pages, a set of queries that they're wanting to influence. We then look at that and say, like, okay, thematically, all of these queries, now we can be able to see all of the different variations of the pathways that an AI model would take to be able to get from your brand, from the entity that you want to rank for, to your brand. So let's now start to prioritize and create this content based on what we see the requisite search volume, search volume would be. So that's the prioritization. That's how we start to like really break it down and create these things. So that, you know, this is what we've started to do for our clients, and this is what we're starting to create. And it's really fascinating because, like I said, the query fan out results that we get, we make sure that none of these are currently being ranked for in Search Console. So these are all new concepts that they don't already have. They don't have any content that sort of surfaces for this. And if they do, then like I said, it might be a technical problem. It might be a data accessibility problem. And me as a technical SEO can change that, and then we can run the model again and see whether that's had a net impact. So that's why splitting out the noise, finding patterns, and actually figuring out where the traffic losses in the very start is so important, because we don't want to double up, and creating content and putting it on a site is hugely expensive work. And sometimes it's a lot cheaper to be able to fix it from a technical layer than it is to, you know, have like a team of content writers to be able to implement ideas and things that we're wanting to test with our experiments. But largely that is query fan out. Now, that's a full thing for that, but I also now want to talk about tree walker analysis. So a lot of people out there may be, you know, hearing about tree walker analysis and wondering, well, what is that? How does that sort of fit into, you know, wanting to be a topical authority? What does that even mean? Tree walker analysis is also another really, really helpful, concise way that we use to be able to look at the prioritization. For true competitive advantage, you need to go deeper than the final answer to understand the answers that the AI model almost gave. The tree walker maps those decision paths. That's really, really important, because like when an AI writes a sentence, it's making a statistical choice at every single word.
Right.
When it writes a sentence, as you know, we just did a live demonstration before, every single word that comes after it. So brand primarily offers shoes and I don't know, experiences, you know, followed by something else. Every single word like that the AI model generates to be able to give you that result, there is a statistical choice at every one of those words. Now, what we do is we want to be able to model that. So with every single statement, with every single sentence, we want to be able to see the tokenistic probability of whether or not the model has high or low confidence about the words that it is generating to finish that sentence. So again, this is like, we literally build models where we might have, like, you know, for another example, maybe not using we'll still use Nike, even though I don't have anything in front of me to reference. But like Nike primarily promotes shoes and athletes.
Right.
Let's just say that that's a sentence that the model generated. It probably hasn't, but let's just use that for you know, for that. So we can see in the model that it might say, like, you know, Nike, strong confidence, primarily promotes shoes, and it might be really, really confident about those first 4 words. And then we see a dip in the model where it shows like "and athletes." I'm just, you know, saying that like a question, because we've seen a dip in the model where it's gone from high confidence to low confidence at the point where it says "and." So we know that the model is really, really confident to say, like, Nike primarily promotes shoes. It's highly confident for that. That's really, really great news, because, you know, Nike started off as an athlete shoe company. So that's great. But if they spend quite literally millions, if not billions of dollars every year on sponsorships of athletes and creating them as part of their campaigns, and using their tenacity and their sportsmanship and their achievements as wonderful, you know, vehicles of messages, you know, alongside Nike's brand. If it's saying, like, you know, it promotes shoes and athletes, but it has a lower low confidence signaling, like a semantic uncertainty for "and athletes,"
Right.
that is something that is quite weak in its mind. So it could have ended the sentence right at shoes. It could have chosen a different concept entirely. But the fact that it chose and athletes, but with such low confidence, tells us something really strategically vital. So for us, and again, we never run things like in isolation. We always do this at scale so that we can be able to normalize this, the statistical likelihood and see commonalities, trends. I swear, like, I'm very lucky that I get to work in the field that I do with the brain that I have, because my whole thing is about pattern matching. But I really am looking for patterns where I can see commonality of confidence and low confidence. So if Nike says to us, like, great, awesome, yeah, we're a shoe company, that's great, but the core model of the business is that we are athletes forward. Like, we are driven by our rolling cast of athletes that we're wanting to represent and sponsor and become brand ambassadors for Nike. And this is a really big, important thing that we're wanting to do. But we see that the model has low confidence with us. That's where we wanted to use content. And that's where we wanted to do like a PR strategy that needs to work to strengthen those associations between the brand and athletes, those two terms. So that's what the model, like tree walker analysis, actually means in its practicality, and the way that we use that to go back and prioritize and to synthesize all of these different signals and figure out, again, what is the most impactful thing that we can be able to do. So to sum all of this up, I wanted to understand what is the current impact of AI models for the client. So
Okay.
I isolated like a lot of different signals. Like, we've done the full technical, the content analysis, backlink analysis, all those different things. We've mapped all the Search Console queries to a grounding classification, and now we've got like a range of different signals to figure out where it's all coming from. And the second one is like, well, how do we influence the AI model? Well, like I said, with AI rank, we want to measure what we want to influence and be able to track this over time. We want to build topical authority with a query Fanout research. And then we're also using tree walker analysis to unpack the AI's decision-making process and understand low confidence and uncertainty. That is really the entire wheelhouse of when a lot of the time we're talking about AI visibility, that is a full gamut. And we sort of rinse and repeat these cycles as we go through and make different experiments.
Okay, now few questions which we have. So we saw grounded queries and we saw ungrounded queries. So the grounded queries, if I start getting ranking in grounded queries, those grounded queries influence the ungrounded queries?
No, because ungrounded queries is the pre-trained model. And to be able to get into pre-trained models, typically, and this is largely talked about in the news and a lot of, people being quite cross at a lot of the, like ChatGPT, taking a lot of, huge corpuses of data and just putting it into their models without licensing or permission. But that is really the source of that pre-trained model. So the idea of being influenced in those pre-trained models, we have no idea how many times like their algorithm gets updated, in the same way that we have good visibility over Google search, for example. Is if a company were to be like, all right, well, we're wanting to be in the AI model, we will basically make our entire database of content and ideas, and be able to gift it to them. But, if you do that, you're also gifting it to all of your competitors and to the rest of the world. So again, this is where it's like, if you can have like a licensing agreement and be able to have this, be, under wraps, then, these are kind of backdoor, conversations and handshakes that I'm not necessarily a part of, but that is theoretically how you can be able to get your brands and your information into these pre-trained models. So, that's where a lot of the source is coming from. So I'm just going to put my phone on silent because I just realized that it wasn't. And that's really what ungrounded means by that.
Okay.
That wasn't me.
Now, it's me. Okay. Now, one more. So you talked about training the model, and you talked about that how you guys go about and find the queries and then build. So this content which you eventually build, is this all supposed to be on client website, or is it something which you build on third-party websites as well?
So from a link building perspective, third-party websites, absolutely. There's, in the case of, say, I'll use NordVPN as an example because I met the team and they're really, really lovely people. But a lot of what they have to deal with is like they've got a lot of regulations of what they can and cannot say. And anyone that owns a VPN, when they travel, they love to be able to use that to be able to watch, television programs and things like that from other parts of the world, but they're not allowed to say any of that. So that is like a brand to entity association that they cannot own because of those regulations. But being able to have this messaging, be said by someone else who uses it in a very practical sense, that's something that is outside of their control, but can really curb the narrative of the way that the brand has been seen and being utilized, and can inform a purchasing decision. So in a third-party sense, that's where it's going to come from. From a grounded perspective, we're wanting to look at like areas of low confidence and maybe tweak the on-page content to say, we're wanting to present this as, this is a global company. Like, yes, it has its roots in Australia, it has its roots in Germany, it has its roots, somewhere, but it's a global company and it has a global presence. So, in addition to maybe fixing a lot of the international signals that I also, look after, we wanted to also tweak the content to make sure that that when the model goes through and crawls, passes, and understands that content, that it's seeing quite literally like, brand is a global country that has presence in X amount of countries. It has on the ground presence. We can be able to create Google business profiles. We can be able to strengthen localized pages and really make sure that there's hyperlocalization where it matters. And those sorts of things, that's what I mean, like from a content-led perspective, because again, if a brand is really want to really strengthen its presence in the US, for instance, but it's not seen as a brand that has presence in the US, well, then that's a really important signal that we're wanting to do, to be able to have on-page content, technical signals, really be able to support those, those brand to entity associations. So again, from a practical lens, that's something that we really want to do. Similarly, with maybe an insurance provider, there's a lot of regulations of things that they cannot say. But in the way that they're wanting to present this, that's really, really important for the messaging to be able to go through, and to be able to represent that. So, again, like when we're working with really high competitive industries, we're wanting to go through and really tweak and make sure that the messaging is very abundantly clear. We can be able to see the sources of pages that are being surfaced by the AI models, where they're pulling that information. And that's where we're going through and creating even more granular tools than the ones I've described, to be able to look at and basically reverse engineer model interpretability. So again, knowing that every single word that is generated has a probabilistic, a token probabilistic outcome, we want to make sure that the content and the way that it's passed is presenting the information as abundantly clear. And, you and I know both that when we work with clients, there is so much ambiguity in the way that they describe themselves because, we're wanting to be so solutions focused that we don't even tell people what we do. Like that is a common denominator problem that we find. And, they're just like, but it's so literal. I'm like, well, if let's do an experiment, let's debrand the whole site and I'll just take the content and get rid of your brand, and then you tell me what you do. If you can do that, from these very abstract words and terminology, in this depth of services that you provide, in the the richness of the products that you sell, well, then you're a better forecaster than I am, and the models are, because we're not being able to understand that. So just having those little conversations and presenting it in a very mediated and strategic way is very, very important for us to be able to see results.
Okay. Now, a lot of people talk about how you can influence ChatGPT. So you can use, because ChatGPT use training model data which people type. So a lot of people say that you could type in with few different accounts and get it to recommend your brand above other brand. Have you tested this theory or hack?
There are so many different hacks out there. Yes, so I don't personally test these hacks. Dan Petrovich does, because I'm more interested in doing experiments and working with clients. I wish I had more time to be able to test theories that people put out there into the SEO zeitgeist. But they don't work, because a lot of the time, and I made a comment earlier, like, oh, you're logged in. Like, there is very much a personalization to a lot of these tools. And, getting them to sort of repeat different things on their own mechanisms. I'm more interested in what is being surfaced for clients' content, and what is being scraped and pulled and utilized, and the sources of which they're utilized. I mentioned the insurance provider before. Again, one of the core things that we saw was they're not on one of these major aggregators that rate a lot of the top insurance providers, and it was seen that it was a very much like a gated club, and it was extraordinarily expensive, and the business decided many years ago that it was not financially viable to be listed in there, so they decided to pull out funding to maintain that listing. Unfortunately, in 2025, all of their competitors still have those listings, and that is a major source of where ChatGPT will surface their grounded results. And when I say grounded results, I'm saying this is going in the chatbot response, and this is going in Microsoft Bing AI overview results. It is being pulled from not just your site, but from external sites that reference and validate you. Because again, when you're thinking about an authority, there are so many different signals that really populate that. So all these little hacks and things like that, to me, seem very superfluous with the on the ground things that you actually really need to do to be able to influence the model. So when they saw that and they presented that, it was like, okay, well, Nick and the Dijon team have been testing this quite literally for the last year, and have been tracking this, and we've seen no movement, but we've seen all of our competitors maintain very strong confidence of association. I think we really need to get back into that aggregator, and I think we need to actually spend the money to be in there. So they've actually made headway, and immediately we see a massive difference in the result. We're seeing them now being referenced and pulled. So again, this is where it's like, well, we only have so much budget. We only have so much time. We only have so much manpower and time and attention to really be able to do things. I'm more interested in doing things that are more statistically relevant for us to be able to test in a very meaningful way than something that I think is, going to sort of live and die. And it's once you put it into the chat response, they can use that in their training data and things like that, but it's always going to be secondary to real human generated signals. So that's also another consideration to take into perspective.
So we're just running out of time. I'll just quickly ask a question. So first of all, so how do you approach measuring these LLM traffic and visibility in LLM outputs? So is there a specific methodology, or we are still relying on old school GA4 reference?
So the brand to entity, entity to brand exercise that we did before is the bidirectional mechanism to what we do at scale consistently over time. We do this for lots of different AI models. We do it for Google Gemini. We do this for ChatGPT. We do this for Claude. We do this for Perplexity. And we measure this with you, with your competitors, with the countries and where you're wanting to surface. So we, like, for some of our clients that have, that are global, I have multiple different tracking tools and mechanisms to track very, very specific things in different regions where their local competitors are very specific to those. We set all of these up working with the client and being very, very specific about that. And that's how we measure it. So that one little exercise was an example of what we do at scale multiple times. And then we have we are able to get it to a relative average out. So we normalize that data so we can be able to just look at, the fluctuations. And it's very fascinating to look at brands and how they will surface, consistently well, and then we will see a nuance. And again, we don't get told when the AI models update their algorithms,
Right.
we see Google updating their algorithms. We see volatility, going up and down, where they will test out different competitors, different times of the day, different things, and we can be able to see, how often and how much our brand has been surfaced versus the competitors. So that's a way that we are able to measure that and be very specific about, the experiments, because at the end of the day, it needs to be measured, it needs to be monitored.
Right.
And we're wanting to track these, and we have our own little, weighted scores to be able to quantify and qualify, where they sort of sit in conjunction with their competitors. So that's how we measure it. And it's called AI Rank, and it's completely free for anyone to try, because this is a really, really hard, time where we just don't really know what we're looking at, and we want to make this as free and available to the SEO community. We intend to never take money, and that's completely there for people to be able to use and be able to conceptually think about this. But yeah, that's our way of wanting to give back, and our way of wanting to demystify a lot of these things. But yeah, you got any questions, lovely audience listening to this or watching this, our DMs are open. We're more than happy to to set this up a little bit further for you and help you out with that and explain some of the mechanisms. But yeah, it is a very, very fun and deep science.
Right. With this, we come to the last section of our show, which is rapid fire. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, Rap, and just answer what comes first. One SEO tactics you think won't survive AI search?
Buying cheap links and just flooding it with crap, because relevance with the industry, with the content, is so exceptionally important. And we've created our own mechanisms to be able to really measure this. Anchor text matters. Where they're placed matters. And again, we've built all these mechanisms, and this is one thing that I did. It's actually some testing, and it just doesn't work, and it doesn't work at scale with the context of the big brands that I work with. And if anything, we do a lot of cleanup with brands that have been hit algorithmically.
Okay. Now, favorite tool or data set right now?
Well, apart from our own that we've created, I really appreciate the SERP features tool in Ahrefs because I can be able to see and generate, where people also ask featured snippets, all of those different variations, and to be able to layer that with like my Search Console data and be able to pull out lots of different opportunities, for more of a multimodal lens. So I really love that one. I also love SERP API. I also love SEMrush, their competitor analysis tool. I'm a diehard Screaming Frog fan as a technical SEO. And
We all
yeah.
are, right? Especially the new version, right?
Oh, it's so awesome. Like hats off to the team. Didn't realize the complexity until I had to build my own crawler.
A book or resource you recommend?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's a really good one. I was actually looking at some really great books that I think everyone should read. I've read that multiple times. And I think that's really, really helpful.
And any AI resources you recommend for the agencies who are trying to go more deep into AI? So any resources, helpful resources you want them to read?
Well, you can use AI Rank. It's completely free, and we are happy to keep that free from now forever. We've developed a lot of our own tools. That's one that I would definitely recommend, because again, like we run that as lean and as green as possible, without just casting a wide net. Because again, someone that has to trawl through quite literally terabytes of data, I want to eliminate as much noise and just get to what is important.
Okay. And any learning resource you recommend for
Learning
AI?
resources? I would definitely look to Dan Petrovich. So his blog is fantastic. Follow him on LinkedIn. I would also say Olaf Kampf is fantastic. I want to also give a shout out to Andrea Volpini of WordLift, to Dawn Anderson, to Aleda Solis, to Lily Ray, to Glenn Gabe, and to Jian Khan. I've never met him, so I don't know how to say his name properly, so I apologize. Jian Khan but him as well. So apologies, I brutalized your name, but those individuals are always volunteering hours and hours of their time every single day to report on differences and things that they notice. And this is extremely taxing work. I've met all these people except for Jian Khan, who I can't say his name properly. But they do all this work themselves. They don't have a team of assistants. They're testing, they are experimenting, iterating, really for the benefit of the community. So massive shout out to all of them.
Yeah, I had few of them on my podcast earlier, and yes, you're right.
So first and foremost, how wonderful they are.
Yes. All right, Nick, thank you for joining and sharing your insights specifically into the AI. I'm sure for some it became a little technical, but yeah, that's where we are heading. That's where we are heading. We're no longer going to talk about backlinks. We're going to talk about Fanout queries and all that. And right. And for our listeners, we'll link to the Nick's talk and design marketing in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, keep optimizing for the future and not just the present. Thank you. And thank you once again.
Thanks so much.